Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Always nice getting a late night surprise from Nikon. I actually wasn't expecting a firmware update. This one is definitely geared towards the new 28 to 135 power zoom, but there are some really great updates in there as well, especially if you're a videographer. It's got some really nice updates to the video menus. And so yeah, let's take a look at first we'll just chat, go have a quick walkthrough of how to install it, and then we'll get into some of the new features. Okay, so this is firmware 2.10 for the Nikon Z8. They also have a firmware update for the Z6 III, which when looking through it, it seems to have very similar new features for it as well. So first off, make sure you have a fresh battery in the camera. That's absolutely important. If you want to go to the Nikon website, you want to download the file to your computer. It's a .bin file, it's a bin file. When you find that in your download file on your computer, basically insert your card into the card reader, and you want to drag that file to the upper root, the root directory of the card. You don't want to put it into a directory down below. You want to drag it right to the upper level of the card, and that way the camera can find it. Once you've got it on the card, plug the card into the camera, turn the camera on, and then we're going to scroll down in the photo shooting menu, and you're going to scroll right down to the bottom, and that's where you'll find the firmware version. And you're going to see the option to update. If you have the bin file in the correct location on the card, you will see the option to update there. I've already done it. Unfortunately, I wasn't thinking, and I did the update prior to recording. Once you've done that, hit OK, and it will take a few minutes to just kind of run through it, do its thing. Make sure you do not turn the camera off. Very, very important. So ideally, I actually put the camera down so you're not, you don't kind of automatically go and switch it off by mistake. So, and then once the firmware is installed, so turn the camera off and then turn it on, and then we can kind of have a look at some of the new features they've added. There are some great new features in this firmware for me as a videographer. There's a couple things from a photography standpoint, but it's mostly video related. So yeah, let's jump in and we'll take a look at them. So first off, when you've uploaded this new firmware update, all of your banks have been switched to P mode or program mode. So both photo and video. So if you're a manual shooter like I am, you need to go into each shooting bank and change the photo mode and the video mode to manual or aperture priority, whatever your preferred mode is. You do need to make that change because everything will be has been automatically reset to P mode. The reason they've done this is with this firmware update, you can actually now pick different modes in each bank for photo and video. Prior to this, each bank was basically a set shooting mode, manual, aperture priority, or program mode or shutter priority. But now with this new update, you can have aperture priority for your photos and manual mode for your video. So that's a great new feature. I personally shoot manual mode with auto ISO for both photo and video in most instances, but there are definitely situations where I like to have aperture priority. So now you can have aperture priority on the photography side of it and manual mode on the video side of it, which is a really good, nice feature. So in order to enable having, like I said, the two different shooting modes available to you, you do have to go into the photo shooting menu and turn on the extended menu banks. You have to turn that to on. If you don't turn that to on, you won't be able to have separate shooting modes between photo and video. No idea why it's enabled that way, but it is. And you can do it in either the photo shooting menu or the video shooting menu, looking at the documentation. I've always had it on both of them, so it's for all my shooting banks. I have that extended menu bank on, and that'll allow you to have access to be able to have separate shooting modes for photo and video in all of your banks. Another feature they've now allowed is with the high-res zoom. It now works when you have DX selected. I originally, when I first got the camera, I was so excited for the high-res zoom. It's such a beautiful feature. It zooms in so smooth. But unfortunately for wildlife, I find that shooting 30 or 24 frames per second can be quite limiting, and this does not work in 60 or 120 in the 4K mode. So you do have to shoot in either H.265 or H.264. It doesn't work in RAW mode. It doesn't work in ProRes mode. So I As much as I think it's a great feature, I find it limiting for a lot of the video formats that I prefer, that are my preferred shooting modes, unfortunately. So for the high res zoom, what they now allow, what it basically does, it's a 2x zoom, and it zooms into at the pixel level. So it basically allows you to zoom in without losing any quality. So it's available in 4K 30, it's available in 4K 24, and H.265 and H.264. It's available now in DX mode. It'll be in HD, so 1920 by 1080, and you can now zoom in DX mode with the high res zoom. So that is a really nice feature. It's also available in the slow motion. I personally, I had to actually look to find out where the slow motion was on this camera. So basically it's an H.264 and 8-bit. So it's quite a low res slow motion, and you can use the high res zoom in that now, and it's going to be HD as well. Personally for myself, I shoot slow motion in 4K 60 and 4K 120, and then I'll slow it down in DaVinci Resolve. And that way I'm getting the higher resolution and a much higher quality of NRAW for slow motion. So I don't actually use the option. But it is now enabled. So high res is available in 4K, 4K 30, 4K 24, 1080p from 120 to 24, and then also in the slow motion, which is HD, and it's 4x or 5x. So it is available there now too, which is, if you use those modes, that's great. You do get that option now, which is nice. Now with the new power zoom, with this new update, what they've enabled, when you have the power zoom, it goes from 28 to 135, but then you can make it where it seamlessly, the high res zoom takes over. So you basically go from 28 to 135 and then have a 2x high res zoom on top of that. So it's effectively a 28 to 270 mil zoom. Beautiful feature if you're a filmmaker with that new lens. And that's a big part of what this new firmware is about. So now we're going to go to the custom settings menu. We're going to go down to video, which is G, and we're going to go to G13. And this is a feature that a lot of videographers have been requesting for a long time. And this is shutter mode, which will allow you to shoot in shutter angle. So if you're not familiar with shutter angle basically allows you to automatically double the frame rate compared to your frames per second. If you're shooting at 30 frames per second, you want to shoot at 1/60th of a second. And it allows for a motion blur between frames, so you get a really nice cinematic look to your videos. So with shutter angle, basically you set it at 180 degrees, and it will automatically do that for you. So it takes one less thing you have to choose when you're shooting video, which is a really nice feature. So basically under G13, you click on that, then it gives you the option of picking shutter angle. And once you pick that, you'll notice when you go back to video mode at the bottom, it says 180 degrees. So 180 degrees, well, like I said, it automatically now will make it so that whatever frame rate you're shooting, 24, 30, 120, the 180 degrees will double the shutter speed for that video. It's one less thing you have to think about. And what I'm going to do now too is I'm going to actually lock that with the control lock. And that basically, so in all my shutter modes, basically I'm going to pick 180 degrees. There'll be a few instances where I'm shooting low light with owls in the forest, things like that, where I will want to change that to 360. So 360 means that it'll be 1/30th of a second for 30 frames per second. And that allows for, if you've got very low movement and very low light, it'll allow you to keep your shutter speed lower and get your ISO a little bit lower. So it's a really nice feature, but most of the time you have it locked at 180, and it's really nice. So prior to this, in the early videos, I was using H.265 and I was using the lock mode. Basically, I was setting up each of my banks to shoot in different frame rates. Over the last 6 months, I've switched to shooting in NRAW. And when you're shooting in NRAW, I go between a lot of different frame rates. So in my shooting bank A, I will shoot anywhere from 120 to 24, and shooting bank B, 120 to 24. All depends on what my subject is doing. With NRAW, I use the I menu. I just can switch 4K 120. It's automatically changed my shutter speed to I'm guessing 1/250th. I'm not sure that with the Nikon with 180 degrees, if it does 1/240th. I'm actually not sure about that. Same thing with 24 frames per second. If it does 1/48th, if it does 1/50th. I need to look into that and see. But anyway, it's close enough at that rate. But it's a really nice feature, especially if you're shooting NRAW. and you are switching back and forth between frame rates, which if you're shooting wildlife, I do, chances are you're going to be mixing up your frame rates quite a bit. So this is a great feature to make it so seamless when you're switching between frame rates. You're not having to worry about changing your shutter speed as well. So thanks Nikon for that. That's an awesome update on this camera. So another great feature you might not have known you needed, and it's actually one that I did really want, and is they've now made it where you can change the zebra color pattern. So the zebras are your highlights or midtones, however you got them set up. I've got them set up for highlights, which makes the most sense for wildlife. And so the zebra pattern, now you can change it from, you've got the black, which is what it's typically been, the gray, but now also has green, red and blue. So depending on the type of habitat you're shooting, you can switch up the zebra color pattern. Beautiful feature. So if you're in the woods, you can change it to blue or red. If you're on the ocean, you can change it to green or red. I've currently got my focus peaking at red, but I do find the red is the most visible. So I have a funny feeling I'll end up switching the zebra patterns to red because I'm not generally manually focusing. So I'll probably set the zebra pattern color to red. Right now I've got it at green. It looks beautiful, but I'm sure as I get out and get into different shooting scenes, that I find the green will look a lot like the leaves and stuff like that. So I think the red will probably be the best contrast in order that you can see if you're clipping or not. So I think that I really like that. That's a great new feature. Didn't know that one was coming, but really happy. Nikon, I think that with the acquisition of red, is really starting to pay a bit more attention to video. As much as the Z8 is an absolutely phenomenal video camera, I think some of the new features you're going to start seeing some of the implementation of some of these red features or video-centric features coming forward a little bit more, which is amazing. Finally, we're going to go down to G18. Again, back to the custom settings menu and the video, and we're going to go to G18. And this one is brightness information display. So this is where you can see your histogram or your waveform. Again, an amazing update here that I run into a lot that it just makes sense. It's an awesome new feature, especially so if you've watched my waveform video, I'll leave a link down below for that. You can see how I like to utilize the large waveform, and I have it set to custom function 1 in video mode, where I can basically just tap that and I'll get the large waveform overlay for both the monitor and the viewfinder. You do have to set it for both of them under display settings. So if you look at that video, you'll kind of see how I've done that. But what they've done now, and again, if you had set everything to waveform, everything will have been reset to histogram. So just be aware of that. If you did have everything set up for waveform, this firmware update will reset all of it to histogram, just so you know. So you'll have to go through all your video banks and reset that again. So now you can set it. I like to set it to large, but now what they've done is they've added the option of transparency. So this is fantastic. One of the issues with the large waveform, it was quite opaque back in originally. So you can see it's got quite a black background. So when you have the large one pop up to look at your exposures, it would overlay the whole scene and you couldn't really see through it if any action or anything had changed in your scene. Now with this transparency option, if you set the transparency to 3, you can see right through it. It's amazing. So it really makes it's really useful. It's still, I imagine on a bright day, you might struggle. You might need to knock it down to 2 just to get a little more contrast. But in kind of you look at the overlay here, you can see how it works really well. You can still see through, you can still see your subject. So you can continue recording with the large waveform up. And it was a really nice feature. So that's another just amazing. Like I say, this firmware update definitely seems like it was meant because of the release of that 28 to 135 power zoom, but they've given us some still really awesome, useful features, and funny enough, all ones that I utilize. So really, really kudos Nikon. Great firmware update here. And then lastly, just like I said, so if you go down to video G10, this is where you have the options for utilizing the power zoom in conjunction with the high res zoom. So you can basically just zoom from the lens zoom right through to the power zoom. It also will do it where it utilizes both of them at the same time, so that if you basically, with the power zoom, it will power zoom and then the high res zoom will take over from there. So there will be a bit of a stutter at that point. What they also have is that they have the option of collaboration or sync. It'll utilize both of them from the start, so that it's a seamless zoom and you won't have that stutter as the lens stops zooming and the power zoom and the high res zoom takes over. So really nice integration of that feature. Again, I'll let some people talk about that have utilized the lens, that can talk about it in conjunction, but it is some nice features, like say seeing those power zooms come into play now with that new 28 to 135. It's quite interesting. But yeah, so like I said, some just a quick overview of the features that I like, that I personally use. Great new updates to the Nikon Z8 here from Nikon. And again, a lot of these features are now available on the Z6 III as well. Yeah, so thanks for checking in. And until next time, we'll see you out there. Take care.